All right, so when the war begins, World War II that is, we declare isolationism, neutrality, but we are happy to sell France and England weapons and bombs and oil and food and stuff. So does that actually count as staying neutral? That's the question. So today, we're going to go over the rest of the 7.1 notes. We're going to finish them up, and we're going to get to Pearl Harbor and how it happened, why it happened, and why the U.S. military couldn't really stop it from happening. So moving forward into the war, not very long into the war, Germany is able to knock out France, the whole Blitzkrieg operation. We talked a lot more about that in world history. There's documentaries, there's books, there's 1,000,001 places you can find out more about the whole Blitzkrieg thing. If you're interested, go for it. But for our purposes, France is out. It has been taken over by the Germans. Britain is alone against the might of Nazi Germany. And the U.S. decides we're going to help out. Not militarily. We're still neutral. But we agreed to the Atlantic Charter, which is not a peace treaty. It's a peace. We're at peace with England. It's not so much that we're going to help you fight the war, but we're going to help each other out. So we have the Land Lease Act, and that's basically going back to the World War I sort of system of extending credit to England. So they don't have to bring cash anymore to buy stuff from us. And it's not like the last straw for Germany. It's not like they attack us and declare war on us because of it, but they do sink two of our warships, the USS Kearney and the USS Reuben James. And U.S. isolationism is tested, sort of like the Lusitania in World War I. So yeah, history doesn't repeat itself, but gosh, it certainly rhymes if you're paying attention. So do we get into the war yet? And in class we actually listen to some of this song, but you can click on the link or you can look up the Reuben James. There's a bunch of versions. The Weavers is the one that I looked up because they added a verse toward the end later on, and I don't know if they were the ones that wrote it, but they were one of the original groups that popularized it. And this is just a song about not forgetting the good Reuben James, and a lot of war propaganda, pro-war, anti-war, is done in the form of music in America, and we're going to be looking at a lot more protest. What in the world? Sorry. That's how you do it? Oh my gosh. Sorry, I was trying to do this for the students and nothing was working, so I had to open it up in a new window. Now, the time I don't want it to play, so I don't get DMCA'd. Yeah. Oh well. So, the U.S. responds by keeping their neutrality. Yes, they sank two ships. Yes, we're kind of helping out England here. But we're going to add something to our neutrality. We are going to put anybody on a no-sell list that is an aggressor nation. So if you have attacked or invaded another country, we're not going to do business with you anymore. If you're defending yourself, that's fine. But if you're one of the attackers, that's it. We're not doing business with you. Which it ends up being a very, very, very big deal, because in terms of natural resources, the U.S. has a massive advantage over Germany and Japan. And if they have no access to buy those resources, and the U.S. cuts them off from other sources of those things that you need to fight a war, iron, coal, oil, food, stuff you need to fight a modern war, then they're going to be able to outlast them in a longer war. And so Germany's on the list. Obviously, they invaded Poland and France. Italy's on the list. They invaded North Africa and Greece, and we'll talk about that next semester more. Japan's on the list. They invaded China. They invaded Southeast Asia. They're invading Pacific Islands. Russia, they invaded Poland. Actually, Russia doesn't end up on the list. But yeah, there's a huge advantage that the U.S. has here, and they are pressing this advantage against their foes that are lacking in this regard. So here we have a map of Pearl Harbor on the morning of the attack, where all the ships were, where the various units were and such. And, kind of the background here, the reason why Japan is wanting to attack us is they are trying to fuel their empire. They are trying to continue conquering their empire, and they need all the normal war stuff. Iron, coal, oil, food, guns, bullets, all that stuff. And Japanese manufacturing is fine, but they don't have the raw natural resources that they need. And so when the U.S. cuts them off, they want to make peace. They want to figure out a way to make peace so they can get access to our markets again to buy all the things they need to continue expanding their empire. But just in case, they plan the Pearl Harbor attack. And you might think, well, that's terrible. They're trying to make peace with us, but on the other hand, they're planning to invade us and attack us. That's dishonest, and that's a trick, and that's what every country does. You work hard for peace. You work hard for peace. But you're always ready for war. I mean, the U.S., for instance, has plans, detailed plans, on what would happen if Canada invaded us. And we also have detailed plans on how we would invade Canada if we needed to. And that's like the longest, most peaceful border in the modern world. And yet, we have plans. And their military probably does too, because why wouldn't you? So I don't really blame Japan for that. So why would they pick Pearl Harbor as their target? Well, first of all, it's the home base to the U.S. Pacific Fleet. If you can knock out the ships there, then the U.S. doesn't have much of a way to challenge your superiority in the Pacific Ocean. So that's great. And Japan needs that because the only way they believe they can win is just a knockout blow to get the U.S. out of the war as quickly as possible. They're not trying to conquer the U.S. They're not trying to defeat the entire U.S. military force. They want them out of the war. So if their peace treaties don't work, they're going to try and hit them hard to where the U.S. can't make war against Japan. They'll come to the table, we'll put together a negotiated peace. Japan will be able to keep all their stuff, and the U.S. will, kind of stay out of Japan's business and sell them the stuff they need again. That's kind of Japan's plan here. And some of the military leadership believes that's going to go really great, and some of the military leadership, the ones that have more experience with America and the American military, believe that this will be a very bad idea indeed. But they get the go-ahead to do it, so that's the plan. If the peace talks fail, this is the plan. I think we all know what's coming. But something to kind of just mention here, like in World War I, most of the military leaders and the civilian leaders were amateurs. They didn't know what they were doing. They were not terribly effective at their jobs. And that's where a lot of the problems in World War I came from. In World War II, we have kind of the opposite problem. The people in charge are professionals. And, you might think, well, that's a good thing. Not necessarily, Germany would not have been nearly as effective in war or in their policies, especially of extermination toward the victims of the Holocaust, Jewish people, Romani people, members of the LGBTQ community, people with physical disabilities, mental disabilities. We'll get to it. It's a whole list. What if Germany wasn't that competent? Things might have been better for a whole lot of people, But, so the Japanese people that believed this, they had very good reason to believe what they did. They knew the U.S. had a huge advantage in resources over Japan. And in a long, drawn-out conflict, they're both going to lose stuff. We're both going to lose planes. We're both going to lose boats. We're both going to lose soldiers. We're both going to use bullets and ammo and bombs. They're going to run out before we do. So that's the way they think they can win. So another reason why Pearl Harbor, back up, fix that. One of the reasons why we, the U.S., failed to see that Pearl Harbor was going to be a thing is because we thought they were going to attack somewhere else. We thought they were going to attack the Aleutian Islands up in Alaska, or they were going to attack our bases in the Philippines and elsewhere in Indonesia. because those are about 1,000 nautical miles away, a little bit over 1,000 nautical miles away from Japan. The Hawaiian Islands are 2,700 nautical miles away from Japan. And they hadn't really been moving toward Hawaii with their navy. They had been, moving toward and taking over the whole Indonesian area. They've been moving closer and closer and closer to the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. They hadn't really been getting that close to Hawaii. So the top military brass in America really thought that Hawaii was off the list. So as we mentioned before, the peacekeeping efforts failed. Japan puts their plan into place to attack Pearl Harbor. And they almost run into this problem, but they don't know it's a problem. The U.S. has cracked the Japanese code. Their military codes, we had figured just about all of them out. So any radio transmission we could intercept, any written transmission we could intercept, any telegraphs that we could intercept, any of those, we could decode and translate very quickly. So we knew an attack was coming. We knew the fleet was about to leave, and we knew they were planning to attack one of our islands. We didn't know which one. So again, the U.S. military, the top brass, was like, well, they wouldn't go to Hawaii, so is it the Aleutian Islands or is it the Philippines? And so they react as though it were one of those two. Japan sends a massive carrier group out into the water, and the U.S. beefs up its naval bases in the Philippines, in the Aleutian Islands, but not in Hawaii. And they actually take out some of the ships from Hawaii to go support the Aleutian Islands. And on December the 7th, a fleet of airplanes launches from the Japanese fleet, about 140 bombers in all, and they have about an hour's flight to Pearl Harbor on Ford Island in Hawaii. So they make it there. The soldiers are caught incredibly off guard because it's first thing Sunday morning. A lot of these soldiers have the day off. A lot of them have reduced duties. A lot of them can actually sleep in or go get breakfast or kind of hang out. And bombs start falling. Now, wouldn't they have seen the planes? Yeah, they saw planes. They thought they were Air Force planes, like U.S. Air Force planes, like doing a training thing. And it wasn't until the bombs started falling that they realized how wrong they were. A ton of people end up being killed. The USS Arizona is sunk. That is our biggest and baddest battleship. Not as big as a aircraft carrier, but as far as battleships go, it's basically the biggest one we have in our Navy. So that's sunk by a gigantic bomb that blows up the powder room of the ship, kills over 1,000 men basically instantly, and then all told the attack kills 2,335 service members, 68 civilians, damages a massive amount of our ships, 24 badly enough that they're not going to be usable at all without major repairs. And it basically knocks the Pacific Fleet out of the game for a while, except for the fleet of aircraft carriers that were patrolling the northern Pacific, in case they attacked the Aleutian Islands. So the next day, December the 8th, President Roosevelt asks for a declaration of war on Japan, and less than a week later, Germany and Italy declare war on the U.S. since they declared war on their buddy Japan. This one is the video of FDR addressing Congress, asking for the declaration of war, last time that we've declared war, funny enough. And we watched a bit of that in class. The link's there for you to watch. You can just search it up on YouTube as well. So I'm going to click here so I don't actually just accidentally start playing it again. What in the world? Okay. For some reason that wasn't working during class, and now it's working. Technology. So how did the U.S. fail so badly? How did the military intelligence fail so badly? One of the things was groupthink. Toward the beginning of the discussions, Hawaii was sort of discounted as a potential place Japan might attack. And since it was sort of tossed out early, it never came back into the conversation. It was known that they wouldn't attack Hawaii. They're going to attack the Aleutian Islands, or they're going to attack the Philippines, or one of our other naval bases in that area, not Hawaii. So no matter what evidence they ended up seeing, it never pointed back toward Hawaii because everybody knew it wasn't going to be Hawaii. And what about radar? I mean, radar existed, right? Radar sure did exist, but it was still very new, not super accurate yet, and we didn't have a ton of people like trained on it. So like, yeah, they had some, but like it wasn't what you needed. It's not like modern, radar. When we talk about radar, we always kind of assume the stuff we're familiar with that we've seen in movies or we've seen on TV, or if you've ever actually been around, some radar stuff, you're like, oh, well, that's super modern and you can see all kinds of stuff. Back then, not so much. And, there's a million conspiracy theories about Pearl Harbor, but, one of them is that there was like some kind of sabotage, and we had lined up all of our planes in these nice lines and grids, and obviously somebody did that so that it'd be easy to bomb. And like, yeah, I guess that's possible, but the reason the commanding officer in this case had lined up the planes in these nice, neat rows and grids is to prevent sabotage. They weren't worried about getting bombed because nobody thought they were going to get bombed. They were worried about saboteurs on base, people that might sneak in and try and do damage. So if all the planes are in a nice grid, well, it's super easy to see if any of them have been messed with or moved or, whatever. If they're all kind of around different places, well, one might go missing or, moved around or messed up, and it's not known immediately. It's not noticed immediately. In a nice grid, it would be noticed pretty quick. So there's a lot of reasons why this sort of failure of military intelligence comes through and comes about. But in class, we took another vote on isolationism. Should we be isolationist during this time period? Should we have declared war earlier? Should we have gotten involved at all? And we've got some numbers, and we're going to take a look one more time at this after the end of World War II and see where folks are at, because, America gets involved in a whole, like we said earlier, America has military bases in over half the countries on Earth. At any given point, 80% of our military is overseas somewhere. At any given point, over half of our Navy is in other countries' waters, not ours, just defending. So currently we are very interventionist. And if you as an American citizen who's going to be voting very soon believe that that's how we should continue doing things, then you need to vote for people that are going to continue doing it that way. But if you're a bit more sort of old school, pre-World War I, fan of the U.S., then you might want to vote for politicians that are going to sort of draw down our military forces and kind of go back to isolationism. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know which one's wrong or right. Obviously, I've got my opinion. I'm a U.S. citizen that votes all the time. But, my opinion is not what's important here. My opinion is important to me and who I choose to vote for. But your opinion, as you continue growing up and learning more things about the country and deciding how you would like it to be run, this is something you need to consider. Are the people I'm voting for isolationist or interventionist? And what does that mean? And what do I care? What do I think about it? What do I want for this country? And that's how our country works best. A lot of people voting, and those people being very informed. So that's it. That's all I got today. That's it for Notes 7.1. 7.2 we're not getting to till next semester. So we'll see you then. Take care. Stop recording.